Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz podcast. Thanks for joining us, and happy Easter to all of you as we celebrate the Easter octave. My name is Father Daniele, and I'm joined by Josh Sullivan.
Hello.
Welcome and happy Easter.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Matt Van Milligan.
Hello.
Happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter to you.
And welcome. These are the days of the Easter octave, so we celebrate Easter every day for 8 days, hence octave. We celebrate as if it's Easter. So
That's
it's
great.
8 days of solemnities all week long. And what a joy it is to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus.
So what that mean, like, because we celebrate, we fasting on Fridays and everything else through Lent, but also throughout the rest of the year is fasting, abstinence from meat on Fridays.
Yeah.
Would that be because it's a solemnity? That wouldn't be, that trumps it,
you
right?
do not fast or abstain on any solemnities.
Yeah,
No.
so, cool.
Yeah, and so this week is a great celebration. Yeah. Every day is like, go out there and celebrate because Jesus has risen.
Yeah, it's making up for 40 days of austerity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we can finally say the word. Hallelujah. That's it. So there are some Easter traditions and things that go along with our Catholic faith, of course, and a lot of Easter traditions that take place in people's families.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that people celebrate this as we're celebrating the resurrection of Jesus?
Okay, so we're talking about doing some Easter traditions and stuff, and so I decided to look into what are Easter traditions that are available, what does the world say Easter traditions are, and you know the really cool thing is, a lot of them are, I'm going to say, Christian or Catholic in origin, and people don't even realize it somewhat. Now, there's a couple things. Now, the first one talking about is Easter eggs, because that seems to be like one of the, everybody knows about Easter eggs. And so Easter eggs being a symbol, painting the eggs, having eggs. But people don't realize, and we talked about this earlier on in the podcast at one point, at one time, you went almost completely vegan during Lent. Mm-hmm. And so you would have pancake, Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras, where they would have a lot of stuff that used up all your cream, all your eggs, all your stuff to make a whole bunch of pancakes, and you'd eat them all in that day because then you're going into this fasting from any kind of butter, any kind of eggs, any kind of dairy or meat or anything, all throughout entire Lent. So people would have chickens that are laying eggs still, because chickens just don't stop laying eggs because it's a religious celebration.
Chickens don't observe Lent.
They don't observe Lent, yeah. So they just keep laying their eggs. And so people would be left with a bunch of eggs left over. And so now some eggs would still be good, because this is before refrigeration and stuff. Some eggs would still be good after a little while. Sometimes they bring it to the priest to get him to bless it, make sure it's all nice and holy and make sure there's no bacteria in there. But then a lot of eggs wouldn't be good. And so what they would do is they're only really good for decoration. So they'd start painting them up, making them, decorating them, and then potentially hiding them around and having people, like you would find them. Play a game with them, kind of hide them around and find them all as they go. It's pretty cool. So the Easter tradition. Now, Easter also is like a time of springtime. Yeah. So the two things that you always hear about at the time of springtime, you have Easter eggs, and part of people say, like, well, it's like the tomb. Jesus was locked in the tomb, and there's goodness in there and whatever. I think those traditions kind of came after the fact, trying to relate this thing where they had a whole bunch of eggs and they're trying to figure out what to do with them. But the tradition really came back from there. And then bunnies is the springtime. So Easter, having the Easter bunny come. And apparently, from a little bit of my research and stuff, the Easter bunny came over from Germany and came over on a boat from a German, and then started, delivering eggs and everything else to the people in the United States and Canada from that point on. And the tradition was that they would, people would make little eggs, little nests basically, and the idea being that the Easter bunny would come and lay eggs, little chocolates or little things inside the basket to celebrate the resurrection and stuff. So, which is kind of cool. And then eventually that tradition has become what it is today. I gotta say, whatever house that you celebrate it in. And so, but the eggs, and so bunnies being a sign of reproduction of new life, because they produce so much. And I have bunnies. I know, like they produce. As long as you let them, they will keep reproducing. And then the eggs being a sign of new life as well, because new life comes from the egg. And so that's kind of the sign of the resurrection, and new life kind of springtime springing forth from there. The eggs, though, having that significance of, we had a lot of eggs left over, which is kind of cool. But also is things like now the types of food that we eat around Easter also signifies from specifically the time that we're just going through. So one of the big ones is lamb being eaten during lamb is a big meat during Easter celebration, and that kind of comes from the Passover.
Of course.
You have lamb for the Passover, and I mean, technically, traditionally, you're supposed to eat the entire lamb at the Passover meal. But if as we're Christian and Catholic, we don't celebrate the Passover anymore. You'd still have lamb in like celebration and whatever else, maybe on Holy Thursday, but you still have lamb left over. Like if you kill the lamb, you still have lamb left over, and so it would be a big celebration for Easter. So kind of bringing that same tradition through.
I think a big part of why you have lamb is that lamb is delicious.
Yeah.
That's and a lot of what you're talking about, it's just like traditions a lot of times are born out of kind of necessity or practicality for the same reason that you said Mardi Gras or Fat Tuesday. And like people take this idea that like that a lot of our liturgical calendar, a lot of our cycles of fasting and feasting follow ancient harvest cycles, follow before refrigeration, before people, were actually able to store food reliably. But with the two examples that you gave, like the egg and the bunny, and I would say kind of more so the egg, that like the egg symbolizes, new life. It's a new kind of cycle of springtime is kind of full of that. That people have tried to attach, or people have said like the origins of Easter are tied to ancient fertility gods and that kind of thing. That like the bunny thing came way later, way after. Eggs is older, but again, it follows that cycle. Like that, this happens in spring is just a coincidence of the ancient world. That we can have these symbols. Another one that wasn't mentioned is lilies. Lilies is associated with Easter. That again, practically is tied to springtime when lilies tend to bloom, but lilies themselves are a symbol of hope, of new life, of renewal, of purity. All of these things that we dovetail nicely, into the Easter season.
It's interesting too, because like when you said lilies too, because they become dormant, right? They're one of those become dormant and then they rise around spring. But they're originally from Japan. So it's not like it's a place. So like they were introduced to England and then eventually brought over to America, Canadian and United States. But they originated from Japan, and they just kind of seemed to attach. I think it was in the 1700s that they started to attach themselves to Easter. So it seems to be the thing that kind of brought in, which is really interesting, But again, like you said, the other cool thing though, foods wise, is Pascha, and so that's. But one of the things to point out, kind of what we were talking about before, Pascha is made by eggs and sour cream. Well, why would you use sour cream, do you think, to make this dish? Because that's all they had. They can't have to keep milking the cow.
And like lamb, sour cream is delicious.
Exactly. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like they would have it. They would have plenty of it, and they would have it on hand because they would have 40 days of not being able to drink the milk. And so they would have this sour cream and egg to be able to mix together to form this dish. And they would add sugar, and it's a celebration for sure. But like this is a dish that is used because of what they had left over, which is, but again, bringing it back to what we just went through in Lent. And now it's Easter, time to celebrate. Now time to have food, to feast, to enjoy each other's company, to do all that from there.
Yeah.
On the topic of food, there's also that braided Easter bread, or is that the Pascha that you're talking about?
No,
there?
but the Pascha's different.
The braided Easter bread is supposed to be like the three strands represent the Holy Trinity. And then there's like eggs inside of it that are painted for new life and spring and resurrection and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Then what's the deal with hot cross buns? Because those are Easter. That's an Easter thing too.
No, but I think that was actually used more on Good Friday. And so hot cross buns being little crosses on them, and they're used for fasting and stuff.
That would make a lot more sense.
But then, as people didn't, Catholics and stuff fast on Friday, but other denominations and stuff don't. But they kept up the tradition of hot cross buns and stuff. So they would start feasting, and like, so if you look at a hot cross bun too, a lot of times it's a plain bun. Well, not a plain bun, but it's like a little more sweeter bun. Have a little bit of icing of some sorts or whatever in the middle, in the shape of a cross. Sometimes has raisins in it. Sometimes, but that's to give you just that little bit extra sugar boost that you might need during the day. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So it's again fasting,
or to add to your penance for the day,
or to add to your penance if you don't like raisins. Yeah,
depending on your position on raisins.
Yeah, but it's kind of cool. Like, so a lot of those traditions that kind of come from that. Everything else that I read doesn't really. Like everything else is going to church, dressing your best. The Easter parades. If you look at the history of Easter parades, is because a lot of nice people were walking down in their Sunday best, if you will, to and from Mass, to and from church. They were going to church and stuff, but even specifically the rich people that were going to Mass, and they were going in their carriages, and it was a time to kind of get out and new life and shine, and people would just like stand there in awe watching all these people go by, and that's kind of
in pastel hats that contained an entire fruit basket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and they would just kind of like stand there in awe. And so it was like the thing to do is like, you know, if you couldn't afford to do this, to wear the hats and all that kind of stuff, you would just stand on the street and watch these people go by, and they would kind of put on a little bit of a show for you as they all went to Mass or back from Mass, or, you know. And so that's kind of where Easter parade's kind of the tradition started from. Which is kind of really, really funny that, you know, like all these traditions kind of stem from our celebration of Easter, and specifically the celebration part of the Easter octave.
Where do we get the chocolate things from? Like, where does it? Because chocolate's a huge thing at Easter. Of course, chocolate is like 3 times the price now heading into Easter. But like chocolate's a thing that people give at Easter. So where does that?
It was really interesting because I was looking into it. I couldn't find out why. Quite literally, it was marketing.
Yeah.
So marketing during like this is the time to start marketing and chocolate stuff. But one of the cool things I did find out. Do you know, like, if you've noticed, most of the Easter bunnies are hollow. We have hollow Easter bunnies. Why not like solid big pieces of chocolate bunny? Well, first of all, they'd be a lot more expensive. Yeah, but the second reason is actually for dental. Because a lot of people couldn't eat a big, huge brick of chocolate. You couldn't just you'd have to like cut it up or something. And so what they started doing was making hollow bunnies so that you could actually just like take it and bite on it and chew on it. So it's a thinner layer of chocolate in the which is an interesting thing. But it was all marketing for that one. Just like candy canes for Christmas time, we have jelly beans. Jelly beans started marketing themselves as little like eggs, sugar eggs to kind of tie themselves into Easter, and then eventually became the famous thing that they are. And then chocolate eggs. You notice that everything again goes back to that egg shape for a lot of like even Reese's Pieces start making a Reese's Pieces egg, and everybody goes back to the bunnies and the eggs, right? And that's kind of
the mini eggs are my favorite. If we're
yeah.
if anyone has some left at home, I think like. What I'm thinking about as you're saying all these traditions that I didn't know a lot of them that you were saying is it is a time of celebration. Like it goes to show how serious people took Lent, you know, because today I think oftentimes people are like, oops, I already screwed up my Lent, like in the first week or something.
I give up. Yeah,
right? I give up. I'll try again next year or something like that. But like there was like people like really taking Lent very seriously, as we should. It's a time of penance, right? The time of reflection and penance and prayer and fasting. And so because Lent was so serious, so is the celebration. Like the church does have days of fasting and penance, but also has a lot of days of celebration and solemnity, right? And I think oftentimes we like to celebrate, but there's a reason why all these traditions started, because their sacrifice was so great. So they're like, we earned this.
We deserve this.
Like we are celebrating. That's why we're eating chocolate and like we're having all these things that are fantastic, because like for the last 40 days we really put in our best effort. Which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great lesson or object lesson for kids in, you know, the joy of delayed gratification. That
Exactly.
It's like, you know, we didn't have dessert. You know, you don't have screen time. You know, Lent is tough, or like, and that, you know, the celebration should be kind of proportionally amazing to just form that in children as well.
And that you're doing it of your own free will, I think, is another big thing, right? Like, you don't have to give up anything during Lent. You don't, I mean, we ask you to, but it's the self-sacrifice. It's being in control of the sacrifice, meaning, again, like, you don't have to give up TV. You choose to give up TV because you have control over this. I don't want to say addiction, because sometimes it's not an addiction for everybody, but you have control over this aspect of your life, or this, you know. And so some people give up food. So like it's showing that. And then I'm gonna be honest with you. One of the things that happens in our house, we don't always go back to the way things were before Lent.
Exactly.
Because we realized, like, my kids, we don't watch TV during Lent. That's one of our big things. And on Sunday, we'll watch a family movie. We'll let them play video games a little bit. But again, it's not like a full day of TV during Sunday, you know? But it's... my hope is, like, our house has been so peaceful without having the TV on, You know what I mean? And we don't even let them watch a lot of TV during the regular year, but at nights and in the morning, sometimes they'll watch TV or play video game or those kinds of things. We don't even have that. We don't have that during Lent. We don't have that. And even on Sundays, we don't have that until after Mass. And I was thinking to myself and my wife, saying, like, this is something that I would like to actually, let's continue this practice on. Maybe not just on Sundays, but like maybe Saturdays and Sundays. Like the weekend, you're allowed to watch TV. On the weekend, you're allowed to play video games. But before that and after that, we'll keep it for special occasions and stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's like so many of the things that were sort of privileges or special.
Yeah.
Now it's just like everyday normal. Like it used to be like you had some TV time. I remember there was only one TV in the house.
Yeah,
so,
and only so many channels.
Yeah, exactly. So, but now. It's just become like very common. So I think there's something to learn. Like our Lenten journey should teach us something about our life, right? It's like it would be weird to say that it's just a 40-day period of torture. It's like 40 days of just like the church asking you to do something that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
But there's a spiritual lesson there, right? Like there's a whole point to it. Let's reflect on our life and see like what are the things that we've been occupied doing that aren't that important, right? Like who have we been neglecting? What have we been neglecting?
Yeah.
And it's not just like I remember as a kid, like, you give a pop or something like
Yeah.
that for Lent, and it's like right after Easter Sunday, you're just like guzzling or you're like eating chocolate, whatever you gave up, like as soon as Mass was over, you were just like gorging on this stuff. And it was like, what was all the point? But now as adults, it's like, we're really like reflecting on things in our life, like maybe these things shouldn't be part of our day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of the object lesson, that like the feeling super sick because the kid ate too much chocolate. And it's like, okay, there's a difference between proper celebration and enjoying the goods of life and complete
Gorging
self-indulgence.
Yourself.
So one of the, talking about just kind of traditions, one of the things that we're kind of more intentional about doing or developing a tradition in our family is actually gift giving. At Easter, because you give gifts at birthdays, you give like there are other times of the year that gift giving is something that people remember. That it's something that is like you mark this out, like this is an important day of the year because
of gifts.
Yeah. But again, it's instilling in our kids that it's like Easter isn't something that we're just like we go to church that morning and then it's just another day. It's like this is a high point of the year. This is the highest. This is something that we want to instill kind of good memories around and good association with. And again, it's you're taking the money that you would spend on 5 kilograms of solid chocolate and actually translating that into something that they will use and enjoy.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. I like that. Like every opportunity to celebrate.
Yeah.
Like, we give gifts at Christmas, but why not? Okay. And I say this like reasonable gifts. I remember, I grew up going to public school, right? And I remember some of my friends who weren't Catholic, like on Easter would get a new like Super Nintendo game. And I'd be like, they'd be on like Easter Tuesday, we'd come back to school after the holiday, and like, what did you get for Easter? And I'd be like, what? What do you mean get for Easter? I don't know. We ate chocolate or something.
Yeah.
And like, I got this new Nintendo game. And I was like,
What?
You don't even believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, what did you get a gift for?
Yeah.
And it was like starting like when I was a kid, like to get gifts for Easter. It was great. In my mind, it was crazy. But in this way, like if we're celebrating the resurrection and it's the gift giving is tied to that, of course, within reason. Let's not go crazy like Christmas or something like that, right? But I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think you too. You we were talking earlier this week. Then you mentioned something about like Christmas. Like if you were to ask people, the church's high holiday or the best holiday in the church's eyes, I think the world would suggest it's Christmas. But that's because gifts and the celebration and everything that the holiday has been made out to be. But again, the birth of Christ is pretty important, even though he wasn't necessarily born on December 25th, but we celebrated on that day. Makes sense. But you were talking like it's just the same service over and over and over again. A lot of times at Christmas time, like you're celebrating the Advent going up to it, but like the celebration of Christmas is the same mass and everything else. Whereas in the celebration of Easter is something different. Having like the whole Easter Triduum is a different service. Each, like, you go to mass probably as many times as you go to Christmas, maybe a little bit more, but every service is something different and means something different to the pinnacle of what I would say the church's festivals and feasts are, which is Easter Vigil, right?
Right. Yeah, there's something to be said about like the different celebrations each day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how we mark them. I think what you're saying about Easter is good. Like, what about on Holy Thursday? What, like, when we come home from Holy Thursday Mass, knowing that Jesus is in the garden.
What do you do?
Like, yeah. Maybe it's not a night to go out for nachos and beer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
On Good Friday. How is what we're celebrating each day being reflected at home by how we celebrate? Right?
In contrast to your Lent, I would say if you're not feeling so celebratory during Easter, maybe, I mean, there's life situations and all that other stuff that can happen, but maybe too, one of the things you want to look at for next Lenten period is how seriously did you take Lent?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's reflected in our Easter celebrations, right?
Yeah,
Like, if we're celebrating well at Easter, that means we've given it our all during Lent.
During Lent, that's what I mean,
if Easter's just like, nah.
It's just another
happy
Sunday.
Easter. I want to talk about when I was living in Italy a number of years ago, maybe more than that now, there was a tradition of like beautiful traditions there that were cultural for Easter. Of course, Easter traditions had to do with food. Like,
of course,
you would have like a colomba, which is something similar. If you guys know what a panettone is, there was these foods that they would have for Easter. But what I remember about Easter celebrations, other than gorgeous churches and nice celebrations, was Easter Monday was called Pasquetta, and Pasquetta is Little Easter. Like Pasqua is Easter, Pasquetta is Little Easter, and like everyone was just on holiday. Yeah. And people would be down at the park with their families, and people would be sitting around, and you'd see people have little picnics and getting together with the neighbors and getting together with family and stuff like that. It was just really nice. It was really nice that they took like an extra day to do those things. Like, now I feel like when we have a day off, it's just like we're hoarded in our house. We're just kind of doing little things,
watching TV,
watching TV. But like everyone was out, and everyone was like joyful and celebrating this resurrection, right? Like Sunday, they would go to church and celebrate these foods and hang out with the family. Monday, it was like, okay, now we're all heading to this place, invite friends, and we had picnics, and it was just a really great celebration that Easter continued after the Sunday.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I remember from my time there. Now, I know as a priest, there's also the Polish have an Easter tradition of blessing food baskets on Holy Saturday morning to enjoy for Easter, right? So they
like a pre-grace type thing?
Yeah, maybe. And I'm trying to remember what's in the basket because I've blessed them.
Well,
before.
Pascha probably. Pascha is
like, Pascha.
Yeah.
So there must be bread. I think eggs.
I would imagine.
Definitely sausage, like kielbasa
meats.
or meats,
cheeses,
or things like that. Like, it's
cheeses,
just like
sour creams.
Wonderful. Yeah. So it's just such a beautiful tradition, and to have this like basket of delicious foods blessed, and even to think of that, like to bring what you're looking forward to celebrating Easter with to the church to be blessed, like. It's amazing. Like, imagine if because you like lamb so much. Like, have you ever considered bringing your lamb for a blessing before you're going to cook it for Easter? I mean, it's a really beautiful thought. Yeah. I know it sounds funny because no one does it.
Do you bring it in the marinade? That's the question that I would have. Yeah,
on a leash. Yeah.
Like it fresh.
Listen, if you're going to bring me a lamb to bless, I get an invite for dinner. That's the deal.
Yeah.
I get to come taste.
That's
some
fair.
Of that lamb. Yeah. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like the joy, and of course I mentioned the Italians and the Polish. I mean, the Filipinos have great Easter traditions, and all these different people have
a lot of
Easter
different cultures.
But all to celebrate the joy that comes along with the resurrection of Jesus. Like, it's really beautiful.
Yeah,
it's really beautiful, and I'm encouraged by what you're saying because it's nice. Like, in your own family, what are some Easter traditions that you could start? Like, if people are listening at home, it is a time of celebration. It's the time of celebration, right? So, you're giving gifts, you're having me over for lamb. Like, what other traditions can we start as families to really celebrate the joy of the resurrection?
Yeah, yeah. One of the ones that happens in Bermuda, and I think it happens in England too, but don't quote me on that, was the flying of the kite tradition. And so where people go out and fly a kite on either on Good Friday or on Easter or on Easter Monday, depending on which culture you're from. But it's seems to be this flying kite thing. And it goes back to Jesus rising, kind of. I think it's a bit of a stretch, but Jesus rising into the sky, like the ascension. But essentially, they're celebrating the ascension, but on Easter or on Good Friday or on Easter Monday, you know what I mean? And so but what I kind of like about that, and one of the things, I don't necessarily agree with the Ascension being celebrated so many days before the Ascension, but because we have that celebration in the church already, but flying a kite can be a family affair. Just everybody taking a time and and running. You need at least two people to get the kite up in the air, and and then standing there just watching it is a peaceful transition. I'm just thinking, that might be something I do with my family on Easter. It's just a fun thing to do, kind of in the field with the no power lines.
Yeah, this may be a bit morbid, but
here we go.
One of the things we do, not just around Easter. If we're traveling somewhere or if we're going to a new place, we like to go to graveyards. May not be everybody's idea of a good time, but we go to graveyards to pray. So we've done it when we travel to different countries, to different places we've never been before. Sometimes if we travel back to the same place. So, but there's a tradition around Easter of visiting a graveyard because in keeping with, you're Jesus. Celebrating the resurrection. Yeah. That, the eschatological implications of this, that this isn't just for us. This isn't just for us here and now. This is a victory over death. So again, it's a good opportunity to remember the dead, to pray for the dead, to just be in communion with the church.
Well, and technically Jesus did that too on Easter, right? He descended into hell. Yeah. He descended to the dead and then rose again. I mean, for different reasons, obviously, than you would be doing it. But it's kind of this.
And it's not that far off of a morbid tradition because we are definitely during All Souls Day asked to go pray in the cemeteries. But, the root of the word cemetery is to sleep. Mm-hmm. The root of the word cemetery, it's like a dormitory almost, right? I think that's the Greek root of the word, and it's a place where we're sleeping, awaiting the resurrection.
Yeah.
So to celebrate that, I never thought of that. It would be a great day on the day of the resurrection to pray for our loved ones who have died, right? And maybe awaiting entrance into heaven, right? But also to remind ourselves, too, of our own resurrection. I like that. I'm going to stop by a cemetery on Easter next year.
Yeah, next year. I live right next to one, so that's an easy plus for me. Yeah, that's good.
Well, all these sort of beautiful things that people practice during the Easter season, it's to communicate the joy that we have. Our Lord is risen. We should be celebrating. And remember, the Easter octave is 8 days, so we celebrate from Easter Sunday to Divine Mercy Sunday, which is this coming Sunday. And, of course, it's the second Sunday of Easter of Divine Mercy. And then the Easter season lasts for 50 days until the celebration of Pentecost. And I love this time of year because obviously Easter is really exciting. The 50 days of Easter are very exciting. But then you get all those major celebrations like Pentecost. Then you celebrate the Ascension first, Pentecost. Then there's Corpus a couple weeks there. There's Corpus Christi weekend. There's the feast, the Solemnity of the Most Holy Trinity. Then you start getting into some of the powerhouse saints like St. Peter
and St. Paul.
So it's just a really great time to celebrate. And so it starts now. It starts with these traditions. And, I think it would be a good thing for families to start some Easter traditions of their own to celebrate the resurrection, but also on other major solemnities. Like if the church asks us to fast well, we should also celebrate well. So it's a really beautiful thing to celebrate when we have the opportunity to do so. So I hope that everyone is having a great celebration this week. And if not, it's not too late. You got lots of time during this 50 days of Easter to celebrate the resurrection. So maybe there's traditions that you have at home that you haven't shared, that we haven't mentioned here, that you want to share them with us. Drop us a line on our social media or send us an email at askus@thecatholicbuzz.com. We wish you all a very happy Easter and Easter season. For Josh Sullivan and Matt Van Milligan, my name is Father Daniele. We'll see you next time on The Catholic Buzz.